Perfect. Hi, I'm Isabella Logan, and today I'm going to be talking about, ADA Title II compliance in the classroom. So let's get started. So to start off, we're going to just go quickly through the agenda for today. I'm going to be talking about how accessibility impacts classrooms, ADA Title II requirements and how it affects classrooms, and then practical first steps you can take to make the classroom accessible. So, a few quick examples of accessibility or barriers faced by students. This isn't every single one. So, to start off, we have some visual barriers. An example of this would be if a teacher uploaded a image of a document of like their notes and screen reader stu user a student using a screen reader went to go and access that, they wouldn't receive the same information as the student who just regularly look at the document that they can see visually. If you don't use like a scanned image feature or alternative text, the screen reader user can't get the same information, and that creates a learning barrier. Another example of a visual barrier is going to be color coding and like assignments relying on sensory characteristics. So it can be like really common to see like a pie chart. And if you have a pie chart, the only way to tell in some pie charts, the only way to tell the difference between different slices is through the different colors. So if a student's colorblind, they wouldn't get the same information and learning experience as someone who can see the colors. Another type of barrier that students might face are auditory barriers. So this is going to include audio-only media. So let's say a student has an assignment where they have to listen to a podcast clip, but the podcast doesn't have a transcript with it. If a student is deaf or hard of hearing, they wouldn't get the same experience and they wouldn't be able to complete the assignment. So it's important that every student has access to all materials and that we should be able to complete assignments and learn like everyone else can. So now let's get into the 88 Title II requirements. So in April 2024, the Department of Justice released a ruling on ADA Title II, setting a technical standard for digital accessibility for public entities. The deadline for compliance is based off the total population the public entity is serving. In most cases, this is going to be based off your census population. So public entities that have a total population of 50,000 people or more are going to have the deadline of April 24th, 2026, while public entities with less people than that and special district governments are going to have the deadline of April 2027. So this clarification on ADA Title II set the technical standard that you have to meet as a public entity to be WCAG 2.1 AA. So WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They're basically a list of success criteria that ensures web products are accessible to everyone. And they were developed by an organization called W3C, and they're basically the globally recognized list of accessibility standards. The 2.1 and the AA just gives the version and the conformance level you need to meet with that. So the list of success criteria are going to be based off of something we call the POUR principles. So that stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. The first one's going to be perceivable. This is that information and user interface components can be presented to users in ways that they can perceive. So an example of this would be having a meaningful image and having a good descriptive alt text with it. The second principle is going to be operable. So this means that user interface components and navigation are operable to all users. So an example of this principle would be making sure that all website functionality is the same when you're using a keyboard alone as if you're using a mouse. The third principle is understandable. So information and the operation of user interface components must be understandable to everyone. So an example of this principle would be making sure that a page's default human language can be determined programmatically. So if your page is in English, programmatically you have a lang attribute that says it's in English. And then the fourth principle is going to be robust. So, content must be robust enough that it can be interpreted by a wide variety of user agents, including those using assistive technology. An example of this would be making sure that each component on the website has the correct programmatically determined role. So let's say something acts like a button, it should be programmed and communicate to users that it's a button. It shouldn't be programmed as a link. So let's get into what exactly is impacted by this requirement in the classroom. So there's so much here and they kind of overlap, but learning management systems. So this is software used for course content delivery. You can do quizzes, grading, things like that. That has to meet the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. You're going to have presentations, so your Google Slides or PowerPoints. And this is going to apply to both presentations given in person and presentations uploaded and shared to users online. Any electronic documents you have, so PDFs, word processing documents, spreadsheets, things like that. So all course materials, it's kind of overlapping in a lot of these categories. So things like having like your online textbook has to be meeting these criterias. So websites provided by the school. So if your school has its own website, that has to meet WCAG 2.1 AA criteria. Um, Then any party content provided on behalf of the school. So that's going to encapsulate your learning management systems or any software used to participate in the class. And then all future social media posts made by this deadline, on this deadline past it, it has to meet that criteria as well. And if you want more information about ADA Title II and its exceptions, check out our previous webinar, Beginner Digital Accessibility for Local and State Governments. That's going to go a lot more in depth on what the law is and what the exceptions to the law are. So here are some first steps I would take if I was an educator right now. So I think one of the most important things is to acquire ACRs for third-party content. An ACR is going to be Accessibility Conformance Report. You'll also hear it referred to as a VPAT, a Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. So these documents basically list out every single success criteria for WCAG 2.1 AA and how a web product conforms to it. So it's really good if you have a third-party provider to ask for their ACR. And if they don't have one, have an open conversation about compliance and your compliance goals. And if your third party isn't being cooperative, it's a really good time to look for other third parties that are going to help you meet your compliance goals and deadlines. Next, I would perform an accessibility audit for your current web products and get a VPAT or ACR for that. Make sure that your own web products are accessible and make any remediations to it as needed as you find out what's not meeting the criteria. So the next thing is going to be making sure that all your documents are accessible and are made available for participation in class. So this can include presentations. So again, this is not only the ones that you share visually, but also share like the file of. You're going to want to make sure that uh, you have appropriate color contrast, things like headings, and good alternative text as a part of that. And then also add that like PowerPoint has a pretty solid accessibility checker built into it that can really help as a good like starting place for making accessible presentations. And then any other like class assignments or activities or paperwork also needs to be made accessible. So accessible formats for things like textbooks, printed documents, reading assignments, activities, homework, whatever, it needs to be made accessible in an accessible document format. The next area I'd focus on is ensuring that pre-recorded multimedia content contains both synchronized captions and audio descriptions. So your synchronized captions are going to allow for people who are deaf or hard of hearing to get the audio information that is present in a video, while the audio descriptions are going to allow for people who are blind or visually impaired to access the visual information shown in the video through audio. Then next, I would make sure that I have a process in place for implementing accessibility from the start for future projects. So if you're making a new homework sheet or something, make sure that you start off with accessibility in mind. Document accessibility can be a big undertaking, but learning how to do it, implementing trainings, really just getting yourself familiar with it and building accessible documents from the start is way easier than going back and fixing old documents. So I would for sure make a process for implementing that accessibility from the start. And then I would also make accessibility a part of the procurement process for any future web products. So when dealing with third-party providers, make sure they have an ACR or VPAT, or at least have some sort of documentations about their accessibility standards, and have an open conversation about, hey, if we procure your website, we need this to meet WCAG 2.1 AA so we can meet this ADA Title II deadline. So have that open conversation in the future and currently. So next, how can Accessible Web help you? So first off, we offer web accessibility software. So we have tools that automate and facilitate continuous compliance with updated accessibility standards. And I believe the discount's already been shared. Um, Next, we do accessibility audits. So we'll do the comprehensive evaluations of red products and mobile applications to analyze and identify compliance gaps with WCAG 2.2 level A, double A, which is also going to cover the information for WCAG 2.1 double A. We offer consulting and training, so we offer expert guidance and training sessions on implementing and maintaining accessibility standards. And then we can also make those voluntary product accessibility templates, your VPATs, so we can make the document saying how you conform to uh, WCAG 2.1 AA. Sweet. That's our webinar. Now it's discussion time.